The Object 268 version 4 is a tier 10 Russian collector tank destroyer. It boasts incredibly high alpha at 690 for what is a 152mm armament. Other 150s like the T110E4, the E3, even the E100 all have 640 alpha. This is the first 150 to break past that barrier, and 690, wow, is that a crazy damage per shot. Now that's not to say you don't have downsides. Your penetration is much worse than other tier 10 tank destroyers. Your accuracy is absolutely atrocious, and even your DPM is worst in class. But that is the weird part about this tank destroyer. It's breaking the boundaries between what is a tank destroyer and what is a heavy tank, because frontally, the armor on this tank is insane. You need gold ammo to penetrate the lower plate or anywhere on the superstructure. Even in a tank destroyer, this is still a very hard penetration. Its traverse speed is great, and the mobility is 38 kilometers per hour forward and 20 in reverse, making it the fastest reversing tier 10 tank destroyer in the game. The 268 version 4 is a beast to fight on the battlefield, and that alpha has got me quivering. In today's video, we are going to be doing a full in-depth review talking about the armor profile, the statistics, and how to play this tank on the battlefield from a pro. So if you'd like to see more like this in the future, you know what to do. Thank you, Pastor Droodles, for that wonderful introduction, and with that aside, we're going to start off with the statistics of the 268 version 4. I'm going to let you know all the good things, the bad things, and what you should know if you come up against this on the battlefield. When we take a look at the 152mm armament, you can see its aiming time is actually not too bad at 4 seconds. Its dispersion, though, is absolutely horrendous at 0.407. This is one of the least accurate tier 10s in the game, right up there next to the FE2 5B183 and the 60 TP. But weirdly enough, it's actually got an alpha kind of in between both of those tanks at 690 damage per shot. If you penetrate a high explosive shell, you're dealing 800 damage per shot. Now, it is a bit less than your average 150mm on the HE that normally deals 960, but I very much understand why Wargaming did not want a frontline tank destroyer also having incredible HE capabilities. So I actually think the HE alpha is fine. It's still very beefy, and the standard damage per shot, wow, 690 for a 150mm is some of the craziest alpha I've ever seen. When we take a look at its pen, you'll notice it's not crazy, especially judging that I'm running calibrated shells, which I would highly suggest you do. With Calion, you've got 278mm of standard pen, which is okay, and the premium's 363, which should be plenty to cut through really any tier 10 heavies, but it's nothing compared to other tier 10 tank destroyers. If we take a look at like the E3, it's got over 400mm of premium penetration, and the standard's sitting around 300. So this tank does have a lot less pen than your average tank destroyer, but that's because this really isn't a tank destroyer. It's more of a heavy tank, just with a tank destroyer alpha, which is kind of insane when you think about it. When we take a look at the DPM, keeping in mind that this is more of a heavy tank than a tank destroyer, that's really solid. The fact that you can fight IS-7s, 60 TPs, and IS-4s, not only out-trading them, but having more DPM is insane. You'll easily win brawls. Sure, you might only have 1,850 hit points, but the fact that enemies have to load gold to penetrate you, and that you don't have to load gold most of the time to penetrate them, and that you got more DPM and more alpha, means that realistically, even though you have a lot of less hit points, you can still easily win trades against some of the strongest tier 10 heavies. And the IS-7, oh, it's really going to struggle to deal with a vehicle like the 268 version 4, down to the fact that it literally cannot pen its frontal armor. Gun depression is definitely a downside though, only at 5 degrees, ooh, yeah, you're going to have to be very careful. While the lower plate on flat ground is very hard to penetrate, if you're driving over a ridge or something to shoot at an opponent, you got to be careful because you will be penetrated if you angle it up. When we take a look at the mobility, it's actually not slow. It goes 38 kilometers per hour forward and 20 in reverse. And that 20 in reverse makes it the fastest for any tier 10 tank destroyer in the game. Reverse speed is something that can make or break a vehicle. If your tank only goes reverse at 10, like an E3 or an E4, yeah, you're going to be in some trouble because you put yourself in a really aggressive position and then you can't get out of it. When it comes to the 268, that's not the case at all. You can easily put yourself in aggressive positions and then just back right out of them. It's got a great power to weight as well at 15.2, almost double the T110E3's power to weight ratio of 8. Yeah, this tank's actually not slow. It's got an average speed of 30, and from my experience driving it, it's not bad at all. Even its traverse speed is pretty good at 32 degrees a second, does not feel sluggish whatsoever, which I was actually expecting it to feel because of how heavy it is at 75 tons. Yeah, this tank, you can easily ram mediums. I think I rammed a 62A for around 400 hit points at 40 kilometers per hour, easily killing him. I didn't lose a single hit point myself. This tank's frontal armor is absolutely insane, and I would highly suggest if you pick it up to ram your opponents. After taking a look at the general statistics of this vehicle, you can easily see how it's meant to be a frontline tank destroyer. It's got the reverse speed to get it out of the front line very quickly. It's got the alpha to bully other tier 10 heavy tanks, but it has terrible dispersion, meaning that if you tried to camp with it, you're probably not going to get great results. And now comes the part all of you should be paying very close attention to and writing down a lot of notes on, which is the armor profile. What in front of you see is an IS-7 using standard ammunition with calibrated shells aiming at the 268 frontal armor. And yeah, you're not going to penetrate it. Unless you're aiming at the hatch, which is still very hard to hit, you're not going to penetrate any spot on the front of this tank. Now, that doesn't mean you can't penetrate it, because if an inexperienced player is angling it even just slightly with the gun arc it has, you can very easily cut through the sides of this tank frontally with your standard ammunition. So you got to be very careful about that. But as long as you stay dead on with your opponents aiming at you, even premium shells from an IS-7 has no chance of penetrating the 268 version 4, unless you're going to hit that, but that's never going to happen, yeah. As I said before, this is going to be a real game changer against the IS-7s, and this is why you just can't penetrate it frontally. It doesn't even matter if you use the gun depression, you can't pen anywhere. The sides are auto ricochets, the weakest spot is 326 thick, and yeah, the 303 millimeters of pen the IS-7 has is not going to cut it, especially down to the fact that I'm running enhanced armor on my 268 version 4, so I checked that on the bottom as well, so you can see just how much more red it's going to be. So let's not use an IS-7, let's go to a vehicle like the IS-4 that has the most penetration in tier 10 with its heat. That's more like it. So the lower plate is pennable, the upper plate is pennable, both the lower plate and superstructure are the exact same thickness as you can see. But as long as you use your 5 degrees of gun depression, yep, there you go. As long as you hide that lower plate and you use your gun depression, well, you're not going to pen that. It's over 1,000 thick. And yeah, the weakest spots on the superstructure are 370 thick. You might be asking, well, doesn't the IS-4 have 374 pen? It does. But oh wait, I'm running enhanced armor, which means now you can't pen it. Yeah, that 4% really does come in handy, doesn't it? So the only spot you'll pen is, again, this hatch, which is also guarded by spaced armor. That doesn't count like anything, just like the Foch. So, yeah, good luck penetrating the 268 version 4. Now, again, if you angle it just slightly, it becomes very easy to penetrate, and I learned that the hard way in my first couple of games. So make sure you do not even slightly angle this tank. It's almost like an M6 experimental. The moment you do, you're easily exposing your armor for everybody to penetrate. Now, here's something that you might not have thought about, but you're definitely going to think about it now. Let's say you're in a tier 10 medium. I don't know, how about the 30B doesn't have great pen. Let's go for the highest tier 10 pen for a medium, the E50M. It's got 330 pen. This is what an E50M sees on the 268 version 4 frontally with heat and calibrated. You can't pen it. This is why the tank is so scary, is that if you're aiming at it frontally and it's a smart player, you're not going to pen it unless you're in a tier 10 heavy that has a lot of pen, like the IS-4, the Kranvong, or the 113. You're going to struggle immensely because any tank like the Concept 1B, for example, you're just going to struggle a lot. Here's the Concept, and yeah, I mean, it's just a tomato. So this is the armor profile. There's a lot to know about it, but as soon as you get to the sides, everything's a pen. It's got a little bit of spaced armor, which you got to be careful about, but apart from that, it's a pretty easy penetration. The rear is pretty weak as well, only at 80 millimeters. So if you get to the sides or rear, you'll penetrate the tank every time, but if this thing's aiming frontally at you, do not engage it. Do not even think about engaging it because you're going to regret it. And now we arrive at the final portion of today's video, where we watch 2 replays seeing how the tank performs on its armor profile, gun handling, statistics, and everything else we went over in the first parts of the video. So let's see what we have up against us. We got a 183, FE 4005, and a Grill 15. All very deadly tank destroyers in their own attributes. They got a Kranvong, they got a VK72 for heavies, and for mobile tanks they got a Sheridan and an Object 140. I can very easily see tanks like the Sheridan bullying the 268 268 version 4, down to the fact that mobility plus that alpha just get to the side and easy one shot, and boom, you've taken off 560 hit points. So I am a little worried about how this tank's going to perform against the lighter vehicles, but the traverse speed is great. I've dealt with mediums already. There was a 62A that tried flanking me, and it just couldn't get around me. So yeah, the armor's great, and you can see right there, we just blocked 1,040 from the VK-72 and the Kron. This is one of the weirdest tanks, because anybody that fires AP at you will not pen your fronts. It's that simple. Unless it's a tier 10 tank destroyer, you can feel 100% certain that if the player is firing AP at you, you're not going to be penned. But you do got to keep in mind that gold shells will pen you. So it's like, do you want to poke and show your lower plate, or do you want to stay cautious? Well, right now we've dealt 1,283 damage and blocked all the damage we've received. I do want to point out, though, that 2 of my shells have low rolled. Wait until you see a high roll with this vehicle, because ooh, it hits really, really hard. Now, the enemy team is losing on medium side, which is great. They've already lost 1 tank, being their Object 140, and now their Sheridan is going to die because they have 3, or we have 3 mediums, and they only have 2. So we have a pretty big advantage there, and that's great, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue pushing up. Oh yeah, by the way, you kind of probably missed it, but I blocked 2,000 damage now. That's another 1,000 added there. Unfortunately, our HE did nothing to the VK-72. The whole tank was orange, so I was expecting it to at least splash him for 1, but no, I guess I just got really unlucky there. That kind of sucks, but oh well. You can't win every trade, can you? So now we got the Kron over here. We're going to get an easy tap into his vehicle. 833 damage. 833. That is a YAG level roll that we just did. What? Yeah, the alpha is insane. Now, we did get penned there by a heat shell, and you're going to notice I turned the tank to the side for just a moment, and that shell pens right on the weak spot, as I said. So, if you do expose the weak armor on the sides of the vehicle, you do have to know that you will be penned. But look at that, we got a bounce from the 4005, and another bounce from the 4005. We've dealt 3,400 damage, and we've blocked 3,000. Yeah, the armor on this tank is just a little bit good, I think. I feel like the lower plate should not have been as thick as it is, but yep, that's the 268 version 4. The first battle was 3,983 damage and 3,000 blocked. You can see the DPM is more than enough to deal damage in the front line. Your alpha is crazy. The fact that you can trade with tier 10 heavies or even tier 10 tank destroyers and win the trades almost every time. So that was our first game. Not a bad battle at all, and you can clearly see how the armor works extremely well. Making our way onto Desert Sands for our second and final battle, what do we have up against us? We got a 60 TP, a Grill 15, a T22 medium, a T110E5, AMX 5120, and a Mil 2, and a WZ111 GFT. Now the tanks that I have to worry about, well, I know the WZ111 can easily butter through my frontal armor. In fact, it's got more pen than the Grill 15 at tier 10. So yeah, WZ's a very strong tank, and it's also got some effective armor. So I could expect it to see in the front line what I push towards C. They have a 60 TP, which could penetrate my lower plate or my side armor if I over angle and deal a hefty chunk of damage. You still got to remember when seeing this tank on the battlefield that it is a tank destroyer, so that one shell from your IS-7 or 60 TP can take a third or a fourth off its hit point pool in a single shell. So yeah, the armor is great, but if players don't understand how to use this armor correctly, which a lot of them probably won't, it might not be all too hard to deal with against you. So one shell, we deal 691 damage. I'm still getting used to how high this thing rolls. I mean, most 150s roll 640, and the fact that this just rolls 687 in one shell, that it just feels like I'm high rolling every shot. So in 2 shells, we've managed to deal almost 1,400 damage, but oh yeah, that's the downside of the tank. The side armor is very, very weak, so if vehicles do get your side like that Grill and E5 did, I just went from 1,850 hit points to 850. As I said before, the hit points on this tank don't last a long time. If you do get yourself exposed in a position that, well, will punish you, you're going to be punished, and quite hard at that. There's a WZ111. Oh wait, it's dead. We rolled 786 and max rolled him. Yeah. The alpha on this tank, I think you can max roll up to around 850. 850. Just think about that. I mean, it's a frontline heavy. It's got ridiculous armor, and the alpha is just the the icing on the top. So already in this game, we've dealt 2,800 damage, but we're not stopping here. Let's make our way towards the E5. Maybe we can get a bit of damage on him. And by the way, I bet you haven't even noticed this, but the gun's accuracy is not bad. Because I'm running vertical stabilizers, its aiming time is actually pretty good. It's 4 seconds, as we went over. So your on-movement dispersion is actually pretty solid in this vehicle. And because you don't really turn it much, you don't have to worry about dispersing it. So, well, that was an unfortunate shot there, wasn't it? We bounced, I think, off the turret of his tank. It's like that little bar right on the turret ring, but there's nothing you can really do about that. That's just a bad RNG factor. The good news is that we're going to easily reload one more shell into his tank, and with 504 hit points, that's an easy roll no matter what. We're up to 3,374 damage in this game, and now we're going to try and shoot a shell into the T110E5. He has 769 hit points. Let's see how much we deal. 720. It's just, it keeps hitting so hard. We're up to 4,000 damage now, and we've only blocked 800, but to be fair, out of all the damage we've received, that 800 blocked was really the only time when we were frontal towards our opponents. So basically all the shells we received when we actually used our armor effectively was all bounces. All that's left is the T22 medium, and sadly I kind of drove into that wall, which slowed me down a bit. But let's see if we can get a shell into this T22, turn around the corner, and this is where you're going to see the traverse speed is not bad. Like, there you go, easy shot. Well, that wasn't an easy shot. That was a really, really nice snap into the rear of that T22. But the fact that we were able to get that shell out shows that it is not slow. Do not trick yourself into thinking that this is a slow tank destroyer and that you can get behind it. Sure, you can, but if it scrapes you off a wall, ooh, you're going to be in for a mighty nasty treat of 690. So that was our second game, 4,800 damage. And again, you can see just how strong this vehicle feels on the battlefield. This was a mastery, and really everything you needed to know about this tank. Now, currently, it is for sale in crates with a 4% drop chance, and there's no real charm, so I would not suggest to buy it. But obviously, there might be some of you watching it in the future. I wouldn't ever suggest to buy this tank until it's around $100 or less, and that's even a lot of money. But it is a tier 10, and Wargaming likes to sell tier 10s for $100. But yeah, I don't expect to see this tank getting any cheaper anytime soon, not for at least the next 2 years, so keep that in mind. Hopefully, you enjoyed today's video, and if you'd like to see more full-depth reviews like this in the future, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. Bye-bye!